Hey, welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. My name is Dennis Brown, and this is my weekly Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. I do these every Monday at noon. Thank you for being here. Today, we're going to be doing a live Q&A, okay? So we're going to be jumping into Q&A in just a few minutes. As you come into the stream, do me a huge favor. Hit me up in the comments with your name and the city and state that you're logging in from. I'm going to do some shout-outs before we get started, and then we're going to jump into Q&A, okay? So if you have questions about how to become a freight broker, or how to become a freight agent, or doing freight quotes for shippers, or finding carriers, or developing carrier relationships, or anything in between, dispatching, or anything in between as it relates to becoming a successful freight broker or freight agent, including startup and or scaling your business, let me know. Let me know. That's what I'm here for. That's my job. That's what I do. I come in here every week. I do these live Q&As. So I'm excited for you guys that are here. Todd Falconer from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Welcome. He's the first to chime in. Hoping we have a few more. Again, if you're catching this on replay, hit me up in the comments with hashtag replay. Let me know that you're here, even though you can't make it live. I do appreciate you guys showing up. And again, hold your questions until I say go, because I'm streaming this not only on YouTube, but also on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So sometimes the questions come in and they get lost, okay? So hold tight on the questions. Hit me up in the comments with the city and state. We'll do some quick shout outs. Again, we've got Carlton from Charlotte, North Carolina. We got Joe from Jersey City. Nice. So we got people coming in from all over the place. Appreciate you guys being here. Again, I do these every Monday at noon. And so you can set a reminder on your phone, on your computer, or whatever. If you're on my email list, you're typically getting an email letting you know that I'm about to go live. And usually we have a pretty good crowd, so we'll see what happens today. If not, again, we'll be on here. We'll be on and off real quick. If not, I try to typically keep these about 30 to maybe 45 minutes. So in just a minute or so, I'm going to turn the ball over to you, but hold tight on the questions. Again, a lot of the questions that I get, time and time again have to do with, finding your freight broker niche, or, cold calling or sales related strategies, or using LinkedIn to get customers, or, any variety of things relating to getting customers, or rating, how to figure out how to do freight quotes and different types of equipment and some of the nuances associated with that equipment. Again, startup questions like, hey, how much does a bond cost? How do I get my bond? Things like that. How much does it cost to apply for your broker authority through the FMCSA? How do I become an agent? I mean, questions like that. So if you have anything even close to any of those, or a facsimile thereof, that's why I'm here. I'm here to try to answer those questions for you. So we got James from Pontiac, Michigan. We've got Corey Buchan from Billings, Montana. We got Jordan. I'm not sure where Jordan's from, but he said good morning. So good morning to you, sir. It's morning time for you, so it's noon time for me. So you must be somewhere west of me. So you're probably Central or Pacific time. So either way, thank you for being here. So listen, here's how it's going to go. We're going to do some Q&A. The ball's in your court. Hit me up with some questions. I don't care what those questions are. I will do my absolute best to try to answer those questions. Sometimes, believe it or not, I do not know everything. So if that's the case, then I'm going to try to point you in the right direction. But I'm fortunate because I've got over 30 years of experience as an entrepreneur. I built 4 different businesses and 4 different 7-figure plus businesses in 4 different industries. So I've had a lot of experience, good and bad. And again, for those of you who don't know me, I started a brokerage back in 2003, did over $200 million as a broker, sold that company. But I'm also the owner of FreightBrokerBootcamp.com. I started that program back in 2009. It's the most cost-effective and comprehensive online freight broker and freight agent training program. So if you guys are, maybe you guys are already students of Freight Broker Bootcamp, or maybe you're looking to, do some online training and learn the A to Z of how to become a broker or an agent, you can check that out again at FreightBrokerBootcamp.com. So without further ado, let's talk about some questions. Let's hit me up with some questions. What do we got? JC asks, cold calling is my weakness. I need another way. All right. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Nobody likes to cold call. Nobody likes to cold call because cold calling's hard, but it works. So rather than you trying to figure out a different way, my suggestion to you is develop your skills. Okay? Because if you're going to be successful in freight brokerage, you're going to have to learn to sell. And whether that's cold calling or whether that's, other forms, you're still selling. The foundation principles are the same. Whether you're cold calling over the phone or you're knocking on the warehouse door, okay, of a shipper, it's still a cold call. All right. So I'm not saying that there aren't other strategies that you can use, because there are, but I'm going to give you the 4 that are the most common and realistic. Okay. One is cold calling. The other is cold emailing. The other is LinkedIn, using LinkedIn. And the other is face-to-face. Those are the 4 primary. Now, what I teach in my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program, if you guys want to learn more about that coaching program that I have, you guys can check it out at, if I can find it, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. That's my Sales Accelerator program. What I teach in that program is I teach a multi-touch point outreach strategy. Now, what do I mean by that? It's not just phone. It's not just email. It's not just LinkedIn. It's not just face-to-face. It's a cadence where you try to use all those channels. Now, sometimes you can't do face-to-face because maybe your niche is not in your own geographical backyard, right? Like when I started, we were doing a lot in Massachusetts and New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So face-to-face wasn't realistic on a day-to-day basis. So we used the phone and we used email, and eventually we used LinkedIn as that became a thing. So we created a sales cadence that allowed us to have multiple touch points across multiple channels. And what we found is that we were able to double and sometimes triple our connection rate because we had that multi-channel outreach strategy. Okay. So that's what I suggest. But the reality is this is a sales-driven business. So the reality is you're going to have to learn to sell. Now, you don't have to be a sales rock star. You don't have to be the guy that gets up on stage and does presentations. You need to understand how to get the shipper's attention in the first 5 or 10 seconds, which is a big part of what we teach in the Sales Accelerator. You need to understand how to identify some need and qualify. You need to understand how to ask some good questions. Right? You need to know how to overcome and address certain rebuttals, certain, objections that they're going to give you. You need to learn how to, to overcome some of those simple challenges. But the reality is, it's very doable, but it's scary, right? People don't like to hear rejection. People don't like to, they're just afraid of cold calling. They got an aversion. They're afraid of what people think. They're afraid of rejection, right? So I get it. But my answer to you is this. You have all those channels you can use, and you can just use one at a time if you want. But the best scenario is to have a multi-touch point outreach strategy that's coordinated and has a continuity between each of the different channels. And that's what I teach in my Sales Accelerator. So if you guys want to get on the wait list for that, it's closed right now, but I'm going out of town on Wednesday. I'm going to be back on Sunday. Within 1 to 2 weeks after I get back from that, I am going to be opening enrollment for the Sales Accelerator. Now, I've been saying that for a while now, but I've got it hard in my schedule now. I'm past a lot of those projects, and I'm going to be getting back from my short little travel here that I'm going, my little vacation I'm going on for a few days. So I will be opening up that when I get back. But the only way you'll be able to take advantage of it is if you're on the wait list. Now, remember, this is not for people that are just looking for startup help. That's my Freight Broker Bootcamp program. This is for people that are looking specifically for sales-related help. How to find shippers. So maybe you're already a broker, already an agent, or you're on the stage where you're already past that training and you're getting set up as a broker and agent, and you need help selling. You need help getting clients, and you want a coach or a mentor, someone to help you hands-on to teach you exactly how to get past that fear how to get the prospect's attention, and how to start getting 2 to 4 new clients per month. I tell everybody, and this is the reality, if you're brand new to the industry, the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is the fastest way to hit 7 figures in the next 12 to 18 months, hands down. There's no other program in the industry that's going to help you faster to do that. Okay. And I've seen them all. So hope that helps. I know that was a little bit of a long answer, but hopefully that gave you guys some time to write some other questions in here. Good question, JC. Thank you. All right. Question from TJ Hines. Calling a ton of shippers, and most of them are only delivering local with their own fleet. As a freight broker, is it worthwhile establishing a relationship with these shippers? Yes, absolutely. You can do business in your local geography, 100%. Now, some of those customers are going to have freight that moves, into other states and other regions and even other countries. Some of those shippers are going to have freight that's more localized. They've got a localized client base. Now, the reality is that sometimes they'll have their own delivery trucks, but sometimes they won't. And so it can still be outsourced. Now, what you have to understand is that the freight bill from a local delivery that's within 100 or 200 miles is going to be a lot less than if it's running 1,000 miles, right? It might only be $400 or $500, $600 bill, right? So making 10% on that, you're going to probably try to make a minimum of $100. But volume can pick up, and it depends upon where you're at in your business. I mean, having some sort of cash flow from smaller shippers like that, where they're doing 1 shipment a week, can be incredibly powerful at the very beginning. If they're doing 1 shipment a week and you're making $100 on a load, that's $400 a month, right? So you get a few of those, and next thing you knew, you're making $2 or $3 grand a month profit. I don't know where you are, TJ, in your business, but I know as a freight broker startup, if you're making $2,000 or $3,000 profit a month, right? That's a pretty decent start in your first month or 2 or 3, right? So I hope that helps. You got a follow-up, let me know. Okay, how much should a surety bond cost? Okay, so freight brokers need a $75,000 surety bond, but it does not cost $75,000. Freight agents do not need a surety bond. They work under a licensed freight broker, so they work under their authority and under their bond. Let me clarify that first. All right, so how much does a bond cost? Bonds cost typically range between, let's call it, maybe about 1 to 6% of the total bond value. So let's call it anywhere from roughly, I see bonds anywhere from 800, that could go. I see people with really, 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 really bad credit, maybe where the bonds are $7,000, $8,000. Okay. But as a general rule, you're going to see bonds at somewhere between $1,000 and $3,500 per year as an annual cost. Now, what determines the bond cost? The number one determining factor of the bond cost is your credit. So if you have bad credit, the bond cost is going to be high. Those people, I strongly suggest you start as an agent, because you don't need a bond and you can save all that cost and all those issues. If you do want to become a broker, and if you've got somewhere in the range of 600, 700, if you got 6 to 7 to 800, if you got 6 to 700 or plus credit, you're going to get a bond, and you're probably going to get a pretty reasonable price, right? So if you got A credit, you're probably going to get maybe $1,000 or less. If you got B credit, maybe it's a little bit higher. If you got C credit, maybe it's a little bit higher. But if you got D or F credit, it's probably going to be really high, maybe cost prohibitive. Okay? So if you guys are looking for a bond, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/bond. That's a company that I've worked with. They've helped hundreds of my students to get bonds. Okay. And they're well known to be the premier bonding company out there for brokers. So if you go to that page and you fill out the form, they're going to contact you, and they're going to give you all the details of exactly what you need. They'll quote you a bond if you're at that point. And that's where you go. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/bond. I've had a partnership with them for a while. These guys are top notch. I've never, ever had a complaint from one of our students who's worked with them or even gotten information from them. But if you guys are looking to renew your bond, maybe you're already a broker and you're looking to renew, feel free to reach out. If you are brand new to the business and you're in that process where you need the bond, maybe you filed your application, right? With the FMCSA, and now you got to get your bond. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/bond. Hope that helps. All right, where are we at? All right, question. Email, in person, or cold calling to get customers? What's the best method? Okay, so best is subjective. What do I like? I like the phone. The reason why I like the phone is because I'm good on the phone and I can touch a lot of people without driving 30, 40, 50 miles a day, right? So it's cost effective and I can touch a lot of people. Next to that, I would say face-to-face. If you're asking my opinion, phone, face-to-face, then I wouldn't even say email. I'd say LinkedIn, and then email would be the fourth. Now, I've already explained to you someone previously when they asked a question that I believe that they should all be used in unison, in conjunction, in a multi-touch point outreach strategy. Because if somebody doesn't respond via email, maybe they'll connect with you on LinkedIn. If they don't connect with you on LinkedIn, maybe they'll pick up the phone. Or if they don't pick up the phone, maybe you'll be able to get them face-to-face. So I don't believe in just using just one channel. Not today. Okay. There was a day when you could probably just use the phone, but not today. Today, you got to have a multi-touch point outreach strategy. And it will, we're in a contact sport, right? That means that it's not football, but we have to make contacts. We have to have conversations. We got to start dialogues. And in order for to do that, if we take a multi-touch point outreach strategy with multiple channels, different channels, like I've described, what you're going to find out is you're going to increase your connection rate. So if you just use the phone, you might get, just for general math, you might connect with 10 people out of 100. But if you use email and phone and LinkedIn and face-to-face, you might turn that into 20 or 30 people out of that same 100 list of contacts, right? So you see the difference? So I hope that helps. Todd asks, how can I streamline the process of vetting factoring companies? And is there a optimal number to use for a brokerage? Todd, you should just use one factoring company. Matter of fact, I don't think you can use more than one because they're going to have what's called a UCC filing with your bank, right? So they're going to have a UCC filing that's going to give them control over your invoices, right? Because that's basically what they're doing. They're buying your invoices. So they'll have a UCC filing. And I don't think you can even have two factoring companies. So you're typically only going to be looking for one. And how do you streamline the process of vetting them? Well, it's like vetting any vendor, right? How long have they been in business, right? Do they have good customer reviews? What's their cost? What's the process for submitting invoices for factoring? What's the turnaround time for them to be able to, to ACH you the money? That sort of stuff. It's basic customer vetting, right? If you guys are looking for factoring, as you can imagine, I've worked with a company. Let's see, where is it? Right here. Okay. So I have a friend, Tom Crota, who owns and is CEO of a company called Opperfy. If you guys are looking to help build your credit, you can go to, there's a free program he offers. You can go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/broker credit. It's a $250 value program that he normally charges for, but because you're a member of my program, you get it for free. Okay. Because you're a part of my community. So you go for the free Freight Broker credit building course. You can go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/broker credit. Now, if you need factoring and you're more of a startup, there are some factoring companies that won't even work with a broker startup. Okay. But Opperfy does. Tom does. He knows me. He knows my community. He knows the people. And so if you are looking for specific factoring for startup freight brokerage, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/cash flow. You can submit an inquiry. They will then reach out to you, set up a time to call, and they'll explain to you all the details. They'll quote you some rates, right? They'll do all that. You'll get all the details you need in order to vet them and see if that's something you're interested in, right? But here's what you understand. Not all factoring companies work with startups. So if you're more of a startup and you're brand new, Opperfy is definitely the number one factoring company for startups. Okay. There are bigger factory companies out there, but a lot of them won't work with startups until at least you have your first, maybe your first year under your belt. Okay. So I hope that helps. I'm scrolling here. Give me 1 minute. Okay. Hi, this is Adnan from Houston. How is the current economy situation affecting the freight industry? Well, here's what I can tell you. Rates are increasing. Freight rates are increasing. Fuel is increasing. So what that's doing is that volatility is a huge positive for new freight brokers. Here's why. It's a huge positive for freight brokers because volatility creates opportunity. Volatility creates opportunity. If everything, think about it this way, if everything's stable, right? If everything's just flat and stable and there's no changes going on, why would a vendor change? Or, why would a shipper change vendors if everything's stable? But if there's volatility, what happens is their rates start to creep up. They start to run into service problems because the guys that were servicing that lane before now can't do it. Maybe carriers are going out of business. Maybe they've changed their lanes. They've changed their pricing. So that volatility, that capacity and that rate volatility creates opportunities, because if you're new to the game and you're trying to get into a shipper, that's the opening of the door that you need to stick your foot in and to start developing that relationship and hopefully get an opportunity to do a trial lane or a test lane, right? So volatility creates opportunity. And so, yeah, there's some volatility in the market because number one, capacity has shrunken a little bit. There's less trucks on the road, less drivers on the road, which has increased demand for freight, right? For trucks. So that's raised the rates. So rates have went up and fuel's going up. So that volatility is a real good positive for people that are looking to get new clients. Now, has freight tonnage went up significantly? No, I don't think it has. I think it's fairly steady. I think what we're gonna see is, I think we're gonna see again a slow recovery over time. But I can tell you that there is still a ton of freight out there. Okay, there are tons of opportunities out there. I have new clients all the time that are telling me, yeah, hey, I got 2 or 3 new clients this month, or hey, I got 2 or 3 clients last month, right? So yeah, there's plenty of opportunity out there. Again, you're focused on small to medium-sized businesses. That's the best niche for you to serve, in the company size. Now you can pick different categories or products or equipment types or geography or whatever you do. But yeah, I think it's a perfect timing. Always remember that volatility creates opportunity. And then the other one that you want to remember is complexity creates opportunity and complexity creates margin, meaning complexity in the type of work that you're doing. So maybe we'll talk more about that after. Should I have money saved up to start this? Well, if you're going to start as a freight broker, you're going to have, let's call it, I'm going to give you a parallel. If you're going to start as a freight broker, you're going to need thousands of dollars. If you're going to start as a freight agent, you need hundreds of dollars. Okay? Freight agents, all you really need, get a little bit of training and hook up with a broker and maybe have a TMS or a load board that might cost you, a couple $100 a month. Okay? Through the broker. If you're starting as a freight broker, then now you're going to have to get a bond. You're going to have to file for your application. You've got some more cost. You got to, that sort of stuff. So it's not hundreds of thousands, but you might have to, I actually have, let me see, an article. I think I have, let's see. Hold on a minute. Let me see. Maybe I got this download. Yeah, here you go. Okay. So here's a resource. I'm going to put it in the chat box. This will give you a full breakdown of freight broker and freight agent startup cost. So I just put it in the chat box. It's a link that you guys can go to, okay? And you can download that resource that will give you a full breakdown of startup costs for broker, startup costs for agent. Okay. So hopefully that helps. Give me a sec. All right, cool. Dennis, I live in Toronto, Canada. Should I look for a company in the States or Canada company to start working as a freight agent? I already have a registered LLC in the States, not freight related. No, that's a difficult question for me to answer. For me, it's a no-brainer. Yeah, you get a broker who's in the States because I would focus on freight that's in the United States. But if you're going to focus on freight that's in Canada, maybe it's outbound or maybe it's inter-Canada freight, then you're probably going to get a brokerage in Canada, right? So in a perfect world, if you're going to be moving US freight, then you get a US brokerage. If you're going to be focused on Canadian freight, then you get a Canadian brokerage. That would be my 2 cents. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule. It's not a must. There's probably brokers in Canada where you can do a lot of brokering in the United States. But the reality is that if you have a US broker, they're probably going to have more US related support than a Canadian broker and vice versa. Todd, when speaking to a prospective shipper, when is it acceptable to ask for details about most common shipping lanes? Well, that really depends upon the prospect. You have to be able to kind of read the room. But it's not uncommon that you start talking about lanes on the first call. It's not uncommon. It's not always the norm, but it's not uncommon that you will talk about challenges, issues, or, frequently shipped lanes, frequent lanes, right? Or lanes that they're having major problems with. As you're trying to qualify need. See, here's the thing that people don't understand. If there's no need, there's no sale, right? If you call a broker up or if you call a shipper up and they're 100% happy with everything that's going on and they don't have any pain, the probability of you getting them to switch and give you freight is slim to none and slims out to lunch, okay? So what you need to identify is pain. You need to identify that type of opportunity because that's when they're going to be willing to bring on a new vendor. That pain can be maybe they're having problems with a current provider. Maybe their rates are going up. Maybe they've had, they've got some new lanes or a new customer. Maybe they got a new mode that they're shipping. They were doing all LTL and they don't do a lot of truckload. Now they're doing truckload. So there's a lot of different opportunities. And that's going to come in the form of questions. But it's not uncommon on that first call to discuss some of those lanes, right? And so, yeah, I think it can be as early as the first call, but definitely by the second call, you should be talking about specific lanes because what you need to get to at some point is you need to get to the point where you've identified that need, you've identified that pain, you've identified where they're looking for rates, and then you're going to do some freight quotes because nothing's going to happen until you quote the freight and then you guys negotiate the final rate. Once that's done, now you can set yourself up for the next shipment, position yourself as they're going to give you the next shipment. Maybe that's happening next week or 2 weeks from now. And then you can go through the basic setup process of getting them set up as a shipper and they can get you set up as a vendor. So hope that helps. TJ, when I speak to these smaller companies who are doing only local runs, I'm letting them know that I'm seeking to get on the radar as a backup, additional capacity. Is that a good approach? Yeah, absolutely. Sure. No question. If they're happy with their current provider and you can't identify pain, if there's no pain there, then getting set up as a backup is great because you're going to build rapport. Because now you're probably going to have permission to follow up with them in a few weeks or a month or 2 months, right? Whether that be through phone or email or face-to-face. Yeah. But I would urge you this, make sure that you're not focusing, if you're focused on full truckload freight, make sure that they're not just doing all local small delivery or small package or LTL, right? Whatever mode you're focused on, make sure they're in that mode or don't waste your time. Especially if you find out they don't have that, then don't follow up. If they do, then yeah, getting set up as a backup is not a bad thing, but that's going to require a lot of follow-up, right? You can also position it as a backup and then they say, yeah, sure, we'd be open to that. And then you can push for some lanes and say, that's great. I'd love to do that. Would you mind if I gave you some pricing? And then when they say, sure, go ahead. And then you ask them for some of their most common lanes or some of the challenging lanes or some of the newer lanes that they have, right? And then you start doing freight quotes. And then all of a sudden, now you've got a reason to follow up. So that's just a quick strategy how you can convert it from, from just setting yourself as a backup into something that might convert into an actual load. Now, the most important thing is mindset to me. What about you? JC, I used to be a guy who said mindset was BS, right? But what I've realized is that for sales, mindset is critical. It's critical because if you fear the phone, right, or you fear rejection, or you're worried about what everybody's going to think of you, then that's going to affect not only the input, the quality of the input, but it's going to affect the quantity of the input, right? It's like picking up the phone and getting shocked every single time you get zapped, right? Who wants to do that? So if you can get past that mindset, if you can develop a more of a growth mindset or a positive mindset or a mindset that allows you to navigate the negativity associated with sales, because there's going to be negativity there, right? You're going to get people that are going to tell you no. It's really important because if you don't, what's going to happen is even though you may start out with a, very positive and energetic and enthusiastic after a few weeks or a few months, that may dissipate after getting beat up, right? So the reality is you have to have a positive mindset. You have to have that mindset to realize that, that don't take rejection personally, right? You shouldn't take rejection personally. They're not mad at you. They're just busy. They're just struggling with juggling a lot of balls. So yeah, I think mindset is critical. And as a matter of fact, we spend the entire first module of the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, that coaching program, the 8-week coaching program, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. You guys can check that out and get on the wait list. The first module of that program is all mindset. That's all we talk about is mindset. Because a lot of people that come into that program are struggling with mindset. Not only are they struggling with how to do cold calls properly or how to overcome objections or following up or all the different components of sales, they're struggling with mindset, right? They can't even get themselves to pick up the phone, and we help them overcome that. And then we help them with the actual strategies, and then they start that process. So that gets the ball rolling for them, right? Because if you don't have the right mindset, it's a non-starter. Good point. Thank you for bringing that up. And again, I'm going to be opening the Sales Accelerator soon when I get back. So I'm leaving Wednesday. I'll be back Sunday. Within a week to 2 weeks after that, I'm going to be opening it up. But you got to be on the wait list. If you're not on the wait list for the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, again, that's only for, it's not a free program. It's not a cheap program, right? So what I'm saying to you is if you're serious and you need to, and you want to learn how to get 2 to 4 new shippers per month, right? Without having to make hundreds of cold calls per day, right? Get on the wait list. That's all I can tell you. All right, where are we at? I got lost here. Does it make sense to become a freight broker agent with all the negative chatter about the industry? And is it oversaturated with brokers? No, it's not oversaturated with brokers. Matter of fact, there's slightly more brokers now. There's slightly more licensed freight brokers right now than when I started back in 2003. Okay? That's the reality. Now, you hear a lot of chatter because carriers are mad at brokers and brokers are mad at carriers. And we've got all this bickering, right? Because carriers think brokers make too much and brokers think that carriers suck because they don't show up on time and all that back and forth bantering. But the reality is there's not too many brokers. All right. And the volatility in the market of the pricing volatility that's going on with trucks, the number of trucks on the road going down and rates going up and fuel going up, there's going to be even more demand. You got to understand, this is what happens. It's a cycle. Every industry, every economy has a cycle. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. The key is you got to be able to weather the storm and the downtime. And the key is you got to be able to make hay on the upside. So that's why it's great timing. Do you have any concerns about AI taking over the role of the broker? How can we be using technology for new customer outreach? I have zero concern about AI taking over freight brokerage. Let me explain why. I did an entire training on this. Okay. Here's what AI is going to do. AI is not going to replace brokers. AI is going to enhance brokers. So here's how it works. There's a lot of tasks associated with being a broker. Things like check calls, things like posting loads, things like vetting carriers, things like setting appointments. Those are all tasks associated with being a broker that brokers need to do in the operational day-to-day, right? So AI is going to take over a lot of those tasks, but it's still going to need to be controlled by a broker. Think of it like a football team. The broker is the quarterback, and AI is the lineman and the running back and the receivers. Okay. So yeah, I'm not worried about AI replacing brokers at all. It's not, because the broker side, this is a relationship driven business. This is a trust driven business. AI is never going to be able to build trust at scale with shippers. Shippers, there's a load of freight, right? Might be 100,000, 200,000, a $500,000, $1 million value on one load. And they're going to trust it to just AI. Now, they need relationships. They need security. They need that trust. And so I'm not worried about it taking over. I did an entire training. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can see I did a full breakdown. But what AI is going to do is it's not going to replace, it's going to enhance. And so what you're going to find out is it's going to make brokerage even more profitable, because now you're going to be able to have, before technology, a broker might be able to move 5 or 10 loads a day. But now that automation and machine learning and technology, now with AI taking on a lot of those tasks, a single broker is probably going to be able to start moving 20 or 30 or 50 or maybe 100 loads a day without having a bunch of other employees. So the people that were working under the broker, maybe a dispatcher or maybe someone that was doing check calls, those, if there was people that were doing those jobs, those tasks are going to be replaced, but the broker as a whole will not. Okay. How can you use technology like this for new customer outreach? I'm not a fan of using AI for mass emailing. I'm not a fan of AI for doing trying to do sales calls. I'm just not. It's not going to work, right? You're going to create, if you put a list of 1,000 phone numbers into your niche and you had AI call them at a business, number one, I don't know how they're going to actually navigate the gatekeepers. Number two, even if they did, shippers are already getting calls from brokers and don't want to deal with people. You think they want to deal with an AI? They want to deal with a non-human and they're just going to hang up on them. It's not going to work. So B2B sales using AI, especially when you're talking about the types of companies and the service that we have, it's not a thing. Okay. And not only that, but the negative impression that you're going to make, the negative side of that, of how those, if you get 1 out of 1,000, how do the other 999 feel after that? Right? They're going to have a negative impression of your company, a huge negative impression. So that's my 2 cents. As far as email, I'm not a mass email guy. I mean, you can use AI to gather sales intelligence and data, right? You can gather information. You can use it to research your clients. You can use it to gather data predominantly. But I'm not a big fan of trying to use AI to do automated email outreach or automated LinkedIn outreach or automated phone calls. Automated anything is going to be one size fits all, and that doesn't work. That's spray and pray, right? That's the shotgun approach. That's not what I teach. That's not what works. I teach more of a rifled approach. It's very highly targeted. It's very strategic. It's very specific to that prospect. That's why it works. Okay. So I hope that helps. Okay, can you tell me what you do with a rejected or partially rejected load due to damage? Well, if the load is rejected by the shipper or by the receiver, then the shipper is going to determine what happens with that load, because that receiver, their customer, has rejected the load, either partial or full, doesn't matter. So that shipper is then going to have to do one of two things. They're going to have to figure out a way to discard the freight or get rid of the freight. Believe it or not, a lot of times that stuff just ends up in the dump, or maybe if it's food, it gets donated, okay, to a local food pantry or something. Or they're going to have to pay the freight to get it back. Now, they may pay you to help them do that, or they may have to pay someone else. But if it's rejected product, whether that be full truckload or partial, the shipper is going to determine that. That's not your responsibility. Okay, that's their responsibility. Now, if they're going to file a claim, if the shipper's going to file a claim, that's totally up to them as well. Maybe it wasn't even the carrier's fault. Maybe it's because they loaded it wrong. Maybe it's because they sent the wrong product. Could be any number of things. So, hope that helps. Okay, we're going to wrap up here in just a minute or two. I'm scrolling. Give me a second. Okay, what niche do you suggest for a startup agent in the Midwest? Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you. I can't give you an exact niche, but I'm going to give you a framework that will help you to pick your niche. So it's a 4-part framework. You can pick your niche based on product type or the industry. So steel or produce or building supplies or oil and gas, right? That sort of a thing. You can pick it based on equipment type, van, reefer, flatbed. Okay. You could pick it based on geography, like the Midwest or the Northeast or the Southeast or whatever, whatever. Okay. Or you can do what I suggest, which is a hybrid of 2 or more of those things. So when I first started my freight brokerage back in 2003, my niche was Northeast outbound van freight. So if it picked up in New York or PA, New Jersey, all the way up through New England, okay, and it went on a van and it was going west or south, not north or east, west or south, and it was going on a van, that was our niche, okay? So it originated in the Northeast, it went west or south on a van, that was our niche. You see how I did that, right? It was van, Northeast, outbound. Now, when I picked van, I realized that there's only certain product goes on a van. So then we made a list of industries that were specific that could go in a dry van, whether that be palletized food, whether that be other palletized consumer products, whether that be paper, whether that be building supplies, whatever it is, right? As long as it didn't need to go on a flatbed, it was going on a van, that was our niche. So we made a list of all those different types of products and industries, and then we started calling on all those companies. Bottled beverages, right? Pharmaceuticals, right? That don't need temperature control, depending on if they do or they don't. So yeah, that's the deal. That's how you would do it. Now, as far as you're going, what I would suggest is if you're focusing on the Midwest, find something that you're interested in. If you're interested in the steel industry, right? There's not going to be a lot of produce coming out of the Midwest. So produce is out, but you've probably got, just food related stuff. There's probably a lot of food related stuff that go in and out of the Midwest. You probably got a lot of steel and building supplies, right? There's different niches you can find, but my suggestion is maybe you're going to do Midwest outbound van freight, kind of like we did, right? So I'm just going to give you an example. You don't need to do this, but this is an example. Or Midwest outbound flatbed freight. Find something you're interested in or curious about, or you have some experience with, right? Maybe you worked in the steel industry. Maybe you worked in a warehouse that did groceries. Maybe you worked in some niche that you can then leverage that knowledge that you have and leverage that experience that you have to be an entry point. And here's the cool part. That niche is just your starting point. It doesn't mean that that's the only niche you can ever pursue. But I say focus on a smaller niche because it's going to keep you very focused on your outreach, and it's going to allow you to build number one, it's going to allow you to really understand your market and who you're calling, but you're also going to be able to understand rating, and you're going to understand capacity, and you're going to understand the nuances associated with that niche. And so you're going to be able to become an expert quicker. It's impossible to be an expert at everything in every market, in every lane, in every type of freight, in every industry. Okay. It's just not realistic, but it's fairly easy to be a flatbed Midwest outbound expert in pretty quick order. You'll be better than 99% of the people walking the streets in a short period of time if you focus. But if you don't focus and you're chasing Midwest flatbed freight today, and then Southeast van freight tomorrow, and then Pacific Northwest refrigerated loads the following day, and if you're following any possible lead anywhere, it's very difficult for you to get any sort of traction. Okay, so hope that helps. Okay, when posting on load boards, finding carriers near the origin hasn't been a problem. It's getting them to go to my destination. What other resources can I use to build my carrier portfolio? Well, if you're new to the business, your load boards are going to be your best source, just the way it is. So when you post when you search for carriers on the load boards, you can not only search for the origin, but you can search for the lane typically with a circumference, right? With a mileage, right? So 100 miles from Buffalo to 100 miles from Atlanta, if they've got their trucks posted in those lanes. So you can identify carriers that are a little bit more conducive to what you're looking for that way. But if you're brand new, load boards are going to be the primary way to do it, right? That's just really the reality. Until you develop relationships with carriers that run those lanes. There's also on the load boards, they typically have lane histories where you can search carriers that have posted their trucks in lanes over the last 30, 60, 90 days. So you'll look for maybe like a lane history. And that will tell you the carriers that have, again, posted their trucks in the last 30, 60, 90 days. They'll give you the number of trucks they posted, their name, company name, and their phone number. And if they've been posting a lot of trucks in that lane and maybe they don't have a truck there today, but you could reach out to them and develop a relationship with them, and you could start coordinating your freight around their trips, right? So that's another source. Good question, Angela. Does your boot camp offer freight agent training or just freight broker training? It offers both. Here's why. The crossover between freight brokers and freight agents is quite significant. The only thing that's different between a freight broker and a freight agent is this. A freight broker has to get their authority and they do billing and collections. Other than that, the freight agent does everything else. So there's a lot of crossover. So rather than creating two different courses and making people pay for two different courses because maybe they don't know which one they want to start out with, it's one course, it's one program that will help you navigate both. Okay? Does that make sense? But yes, it does cover freight agents. I would say that we probably have equal, if not more, freight agents coming out of our program now than we do brokers, just because it's way less expensive, way less risk, right? And it's a way easier job. And just because you start as an agent doesn't mean that a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years from now, you can't pivot your business over into your own brokerage. Absolutely, you can. Let's see. We still got a lot of questions here. Holy cow. I'm trying to limit this here, but let's see. Scrolling. Give me a minute. El Padre asks, as self-funding, I'm having issues establishing an Ansonia account. How did you vetted your customers when you had your freight? How did I vet customers as a freight broker? We used Dun & Bradstreet and we used Ansonia. But what we would do is we would use that. We would gather data from other sources. So if we had XYZ bottling company or XYZ widget company, we would have their DUNS number, or we would have their company name and address, and we would do a search, a query, and then we would pull a report on that customer. That customer, that report would then give us how long they've been in business, what, some more details about their industry, how they pay their freight bills, how they pay their other vendors, right? Do they have any lawsuits? Do they have any liens? Do they have any bad credit, right? Have they been in bankruptcy? Just like a personal credit report, you're basically pulling a business credit report. So Dun & Bradstreet is an alternative if for some reason you can't get set up with Ansonia. I'm not sure. I think Ansonia got bought by Equifax, right? So Ansonia is now Equifax, I think. Give me a minute. Pretty sure. Let's see. Ansonia Business Credit. I'm not sure what. Yeah, it's an Equifax company. So they were bought by Equifax. So if you go to Ansonia.com, it'll give you, how to create an Ansonia account, if you're already an existing member, all that, right? Just go to, if you're looking for that, here's a link right here. I'll give you a link. This is where you can go get set up with Ansonia, where you can pull business credit reports on potential shippers so you can evaluate their credit. And what we're talking about, in case we lost anybody in the audience, when you're a broker and you're going to bring on a new customer, because they're going to be running thousands of dollars, potentially tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of business with you, you need to run credit on them to make sure that they're credit worthy. Because if they're not credit worthy, then you're not going to give them credit, because you're going to give them typically 30-day terms to pay you. So they don't pay you up front, they pay you in 30 days. So that credit risk you have to evaluate. So a lot of times if you're working with a factoring company, they're doing that for you. But if you're self-funding, then you're going to have to run that credit and assess risk. So you can always start out with just one load as a test load. I mean, there's not a lot of risk there, obviously. But if they're looking for 10,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 credit line, which isn't a lot when you're talking about freight, right? If they move one load a day with you, 20 loads a month at, let's call it $1,500 a load. I mean, that's 30 grand right there. That's $30,000 credit line they're going to need rolled over every month, right? So you're going to need to evaluate credit. The best place to go is either Dun & Bradstreet or Ansonia, and you'll be able to set up an account and buy reports for credit evaluation and risk. Okay, I think this might be the last question, but hang tight because I got something you guys are going to want to hear. It's a challenge finding a good lead list to call from. I've tried the load board directory on DAT. Okay, you're going to love me, James. You're going to love me because I'm going to give you the gift that keeps on giving. Okay, this is the best place to go and develop a lead list. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/free leads. Now, if you go there, it's a company called Apollo. But that link will allow you to sign up for Apollo with no credit card and just your email. Now, once you set up an account there, it's free, doesn't cost you anything. Once you set up an account there, you can go in and search. They have incredibly good data, and you can go in and search by geography, industry type, company size, job titles, shipping managers, warehouse managers, transportation managers. You can go in and search by all these different variables, and you can develop your own shipper list to do outreach to. Now, it's going to give you the main company phone number that you'll be able to call. Now, if you want a direct number to the shipping manager, or you want that shipping manager's direct email, that's an upsell. You can pay for that data, but you don't need it. You can use this data absolutely free because it's going to give you the company name and the shipping manager's name. What else do you need beyond that, right? If you want his email, maybe you can research it other ways, but if not, you can always do an upcharge. But getting all that data is incredibly powerful, and it's free. So if you guys are looking to build a lead list, if you're looking to find companies to call in your niche, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/free leads. You can sign up for free, cost you $0. You never have to pay them a dime. You can use the service forever, and you can build hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of companies in your lead list. And it's very, very good data. Very good. Very updated. Data is, from the minute you publish it, it's aged, but they have extremely good data. Okay. They had hundreds of my students go through that use Apollo, that have used that free link to sign up. Okay. So, all right, guys, listen, I want to hear one thing. That's great. My main concern, how can I learn the paperwork after landing a new deal? Okay. So here's what I'm going to say. Okay. If you guys are here and you're curious about becoming a freight broker or a freight agent, you're just not quite sure yet. You're like doing a little bit of research and you're on TikTok and you're on YouTube and you're on LinkedIn, and you're on Google, and you're getting all these pieces of information, and they're not all consistent and they don't all jive. One person says to do this, and one person says to do that. I have a program called my Freight Broker Bootcamp. Okay. It is by far the most cost-effective and comprehensive online freight broker and freight agent training program, hands down. Had the program since 2009. We put over 10,000 students through that program. We offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. Okay. So you have zero risk. All right. So if you're curious about becoming a freight broker or freight agent, you want to go through that program and you're looking for some support and you're looking for some direction, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. You sign up now, you'll get instant access to all the training. You can start now, you can start this weekend, you can start whenever. Okay. Now, if you guys are struggling with getting customers, if you're at that point where you need to start doing sales and you're struggling with your mindset, you're struggling with the proper cold calling strategies and how to do all this stuff and how to start getting shippers, start generating cash flow, and you're looking for a coach, you're looking for a mentor, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. That is my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. That's an 8-week live coaching and mentoring program where I take that piece of my brain, I transplant it into your heads, and I teach you my best freight broker sales strategies, tactics, tools, and the entire system that I use to do over $200 million as a freight broker. So if you get on the wait list, you'll get notified in the next couple of weeks when it opens up. And then from there, I handpick every person that comes into that program. We'll end up jumping on a call, and I'm going to, you're going to ask, I'm going to determine if you're a good fit for the program. And if you are, I'm going to invite you in, and then you're going to be a part of the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator community. Again, it's not a free program. It's not a cheap program, but put it this way. The investment, I've had so many students go through this program that are now doing 6 and 7 and even 8 figures in sales, right? You can read tons of testimonies. I'm going to stop here because ultimately, if you get on the wait list, you'll get all the details. But listen, I appreciate you guys being here. You guys asked some really good questions today. It was awesome. We had a really, really good group. I'm happy. Do me a huge favor before you leave. Hit the like button, no matter where you're at. It costs you nothing. The price of admission for you is to hit the like button. If you learned one thing today, if you only learned one thing, hit the like button. If you're on LinkedIn, hit the like button. If you're on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. If you're on Facebook, that's the price of admission. Okay. That's all it costs you. I'll come back every week and do these free lives. Okay. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned something. I hope to see you inside the boot camp and or the sales accelerator. I'm going to be leaving Wednesday. I'll be back Sunday. I'll do another live on Monday. And then we're going to probably within the week there, hopefully we're going to launch the sales accelerator. So make sure you get on the wait list. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. And I'll see you next week on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live.